Good morning. I'm Bonnie Gardner, Chair of our Public Affairs Forum at the First Unitarian Universalist Church. Welcome. Our programs occur most Sundays at noon, and they're free and open to the public. We encourage you to attend. Our church mission is to nourish the mind and the spirit and to serve social justice. For more information about our forum programs, you can go to our church website at www.austinuu.org. And today, our forum committee member, Judy Sadag, will be introducing today's speakers, talking about refugee services. Judy, thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'm really pleased to introduce our speakers from Refugee Services of Texas. To my right, I have Erica Schmidt-Portnoy. She's the area director. Erica was born and raised in New Braunfels, Texas, and received her Master's of Social Work at UT Austin in 2011. She has worked for several refugee nonprofit agencies. She has built her career on direct social service and is well-versed in the needs of ever-changing refugee population. Next, I have Moses Thang. He's the Employer Relations Coordinator. Moses was born in Calais, Burma, also known as Myanmar, which has been ruled by an authoritarian military government since 1962. His mother was discriminated against by the military, and she fled to Malaysia as a refugee in 2003, and Moses followed her 2 years later. In 2008, Moses and his family were brought to the United States for resettlement, and he began working for Refugee Services of Texas in 2011. He was promoted last year to Employer Relations Coordinator and now supervises the employment program in Refugee Services of Texas's Austin Service Center. And on my left, I have Mallory Marcone. She's in development, and she's with Americorp Vista. Mallory was raised in Charlotte, South Carolina, and came to Texas to attend Texas State University in San Marcos. She was in anthropology, but last year she decided to shift her career to serving refugees. She joined Americorp Civil Service Program to work with Refugee Services of Texas. Her role is to further community outreach and development efforts in order to help Refugee Services better serve refugees and other displaced people. She's now nearing completion of her service year, but she's hoping to remain with Refugee Services. And Qahtan, Mustafa, is the Community Integration Supervisor. He was born and raised in Baghdad, Iraq. He received a degree in agriculture at the university there and began working as an interpreter for the U.S. Armed Forces in 2003. It wasn't long until he started to feel that his family safety was involved, and he took steps to try to protect his family. In 2009, he finally made the decision to leave Iraq. Qahtan began working for Refugee Services as a pre-arrival case manager that same year and was promoted to supervisor of the Resettlement program in 2013. Qahtan and his wife became U.S. citizens on World Refugee Day in 2014. So I'm sure that we're all waiting to hear what they all have to say to us this morning. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. And I just would like to talk a little bit about my family and where I'm from and where we are today. So first of all, I am now an American since 2013 with my family, and we're now me and my parents, my wife, and my grandma. We are all here. So we're really happy to be here. But as Bonnie introduced us, we came from, if you can see it from your seat, from Myanmar, Burma over there. For me, it kind of looks like someone dancing on one feet. And it's a very beautiful country. I was very happy, and I'm really sad when I left there. But last year, after I became a citizen, I was able to go back to my country, and it has changed a lot. And it has become more beautiful, but every good thing comes with some bad side, because now the biggest city has a lot of traffic. So apart from that, it's very beautiful. And from Myanmar, I came from a small town called Kalemyo. And when I left, everyone was riding bicycles. But when I went back last year, everyone was on motorcycles, and the road was filled with motorcycles. A lot of changes. And another interesting fact is that I married my wife in 2013 here in Austin. She's also a Burmese, and she came from the same small town in Calais, but we have never met. And we both live in Malaysia for a while, and we've never met. But finally, when we get to the U.S., we were able to meet and then get married in 2013. And that is one interesting fact. Now, a little bit of my life is that I was born in Calais, and then I went to Yangon, our capital city, also known as Rangoon, when I was 12 years old. And then I went to high school. Before I could finish 9th grade, my mom, she called me from Malaysia to be with her. She has been there 2 years prior to my arrival. And when I was 15, I finally was able to go to Malaysia from underground illegally. And it was a 3-day trip. It was dangerous. Some has taken more than 2 weeks to get there. We couldn't walk with our shoes on because it would create noise, and then the police would catch us. So we had to walk barefoot. And then some people who were caught, they have very unfortunate situations that they have to be in. So I'm really fortunate that I could get to Malaysia in 3 days. And then I lived in Malaysia for 3 years. Within that 3 years, I wasn't able to go to school. But fortunately, my aunt, who is in Laredo, Texas, she sponsored me so that I can go to an English school during that 3 years. And then when I got here back in 2008, I was able to go back to charter high school. I wasn't able to join a normal high school because of my age, and unless I could finish high school within 3 years, they couldn't enroll me. So I was able to finish high school back in 2010, and then I worked as a waiter, a server at Westminster Manor. It's a elderly retirement home, a beautiful place. I worked there for about 6 months, and 2012 February, I was able to join Refugee Services of Texas as employment case manager. And my parents, my dad, when he got here, he was able to work as a sushi maker, as you can see in like H-E-B and Whole Food and Central Market. If you notice the sushi makers, he worked there for like 8 months, I believe. And once we get to Austin, he was able to work in a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant. So, and then my mom worked as a minister. She started a church back in Malaysia, and it's now turning 10 years this year. She may go back in May celebrate with them. And then once she got here back in 2010, she started a church, a Burmese church in the community, and she has been a community leader since. And so the reason I talked about the employment is that I just want to say, as an employment case manager at Refugee Services of Texas, it plays a very big role for my family as a refugee, and I understand that it's a big role for new families to be employed, to be integrated into the community, and then start giving out instead of just receiving, as some people might see them. So this is just a little bit of my story. I will talk more about the employment section in the next few slides. Thank you.
Well, hello, and thank you all again for sitting in with us and learning a little bit more about refugees and what we do. Moses' story is just one of millions of stories of persecution, but also resilience and the journey that people take to get to the U.S. or to a third country for resettlement. Refugees, the term refugee is often thrown around in the media, so we always think it's a great starting point to just define who a refugee is, because it's a definition that was and is granted by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and it's a person who has been persecuted for various reasons that you can see up here: religion, race, nationality, belonging to a social group or a political group, almost everything under the sun. If there's been persecution, people can apply for refugee status. And this doesn't mean that you're immediately going to be resettled. It just means that the UN recognizes that you have undergone persecution in your home country, and that you are no longer able to stay there, or don't believe that the country is going to support you in overcoming that. So people take various routes, but typically people do not get the status until they have fled to another country and they have registered with the UN and started the process for hopefully being resettled to another country. Refugees don't know where they will be resettled. That's, I think, a big statement or a big misnomer as well, that people think refugees register so that they can come to the U.S., and that's not true. Refugees are more than happy to be given a home wherever they are welcomed into. If it happens to be the U.S., great. If it happens to be Sweden, great. Refugees will go anywhere that they're welcome to. So it's a large group of people from all over the world. For our organization here in Austin, and where the demographics look different in every single city across the U.S. There's roughly 185 cities that resettle refugees, large and small, from New York City on the one end maybe down to Abilene or Amarillo here in Texas. So it runs the spectrum. Austin, we sort of fall somewhere in the middle there. The nationalities that we see coming to Texas, it's a little hard to see up on the screen here, but refugees are coming from Afghanistan, from Burma, from Bhutan, from Iraq, Iran, Syria, several different African countries, but predominantly Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, Sudan, Eritrea, and then also Cuba. We receive a few Cuban refugees from Cuba. So it runs the spectrum. Last year we served 25 different nationalities just through our organization alone. So there's quite a few. The ones that we have pulled up here are the predominant ones, but it really changes as political situations and civil unrest changes throughout the years. And so that's why right now there's a lot more people coming from certain countries, a lot less from others, and those families that are in few numbers now may have been in very high numbers in the past when there was a bigger program going on to resettle them. So it really varies. A couple unique countries for us to work with are Iraq and Afghanistan, because there are not only refugees coming from those two countries, there are interpreters that worked for the U.S. government in some way. And so those families that resettle to Austin are families that speak English. And so it's a very unique situation for those families. They can go to work quicker. They understand what's going on so much easier. And so the language gap is drastically minimized by having and by working with those former interpreters, and they're to have a great advantage too from the start. Other countries are all refugees, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Iran are only religious minorities that are being resettled, and then everyone else, there's a lot of variety in their stories of persecution and why they're being resettled. Right now, we are in the middle of a global humanitarian crisis, and that is not an understatement at all. May have been questionable a few years back. That is what it is right now. There's no doubt about it. There are as many refugees right now as there were after World War II. There are 60 million refugees and internally displaced people in the world. 60 million. It's roughly the size of Italy. So it's as if all of Italy needed to go somewhere else because the war was so great in their country, or they just could not stay there anymore. But 60 million. It's a large, large number. And we as Americans and as a country have a great long history of resettling refugees, starting from after World War II and resettling Europeans who were displaced by the wars. So we have a great long history. The resettlement program itself is well vetted and well established. So this is not a new program. Refugees do not come to the U.S. and arrive at the airport and they're on their own to figure things out. We are the organization that meets them at the airport and makes sure that their journey goes smoothly after arrival. So it's a well-established program that has very successful outcomes in terms of employment and self-sufficiency and all of those things that are really important to families' ultimate success here in Austin. But for 60 million refugees and internally displaced people to be in the world right now, we are extremely capable as Americans of resettling a large number of refugees in our country. We're very capable. We resettled over 200,000 in 1 year in the 80s, and those were predominantly Vietnamese refugees. So we're very well equipped. Refugees are the single most scrutinized immigrant that sets foot in our country, by far as well, by far. They go through so many background checks that people never get out of the background check process, because every security check has to be current, cannot be expired, and it all has to line up in order for somebody to set foot on the airplane that will bring them here. People are pulled out of the airport or pulled off the plane if something suddenly goes expired, and that happens. And so that's a reality for refugees, and we have the ability to open our doors to a large number. We have this year we're supposed to be resettling 85,000 in the country. It's a little over or around 1,000 for us here in Austin, and that's very manageable for a city like Austin. We can do more, and the country as well can do more than that. So you all are very well versed in the civil unrest that's going on around our world right now, and the populations especially that are in need of resettlement. We're well equipped to take those populations on, and they're already arriving anyway. We're already resettling their families. So we're well positioned to increase the number that we resettle in the country, and we welcome and appreciate your support with making that clear to our country that this is who we are as Americans. We welcome in displaced people because many of us have that in our own backgrounds. Our own families are not originally from the U.S. Very few of us are originally from the U.S. And so this is our way of contributing to that ongoing journey for us as a country to build ourselves into a stronger, more diverse country, and we believe strongly in that. I'm going to hand things over now to Qahtan, who can speak a little bit more to what happens once refugees arrive here and what do we do as an organization to help support refugees. Qahtan.
Thank you so much, Erika, for providing us with a great update about the current situation of refugees and immigrants all over the world. And 60 million, the number is big. I work on it, but now it's oh wow, it's too big. Here, Austin. Here, Austin is we as Refugee Services of Texas, we consider Austin for 1,000 or over 1,000 refugees and immigrants as the final destination. Okay, and after a long process of applying, paperwork, interviews, getting to Austin is after probably 3 to 4 years. That what refugees, the average wait at least right now. Refugee Services of Texas at Austin office offers refugees with several programs. The Resettlement program, or what we call it Reception and Placement program. This program provides the services for refugees probably 2 weeks even before they arrive here. To start with setting up their apartments or pick them up from the airport and take them to that apartment that we already set it up with basic furniture and food. And also this program in charge of registering the refugee kids in the school and refer them to medical services so they can get their vaccination in order for them to be able to start the school. And then also we do refer the adults to English classes so they can learn English. The program also help clients or the refugee and immigrant individuals to achieve self-sufficiency within 3 to 6 months. The resettlement program is the backbone, basically, for our office here in Austin. In addition to that program, we have the extended case management or the social adjustment services program. This program continues with the refugees up to 5 years and provide them with different kind of referrals that they need in order to be also self-sufficient. Our ultimate goal is the self-sufficiency here in Austin. Along with that program, we have the medical case management program. And that program, our clients come through from very difficult situation. They were displaced. They basically even saw death. Probably they lost the people from their families. They might come with some medical issues. So we have the team that help them to navigate the medical system in here in U.S., especially in Austin, which is so much different than what they have in the location where they come from. We have also the therapy and community wellness program that provide our clients with services to make their adjustment in Austin easier and smoother. We have the immigration program that helps the clients to adjust their status, basically. All refugees are eligible to become U.S. citizens after being in the country for 5 years. And our office in Austin, we provide these services for free, which is great for our clients to have such services. And one of the other programs also we have the Survival of Trafficking and Empowerment program. This program provides domestic and foreign survivors with services they need also to start a new life. Our office is working really hard every day to try to help our clients start a new life, achieve self-sufficiency. And it's just amazing to see the transition process. When you pick up someone from the airport the first day they arrive here, and if you see them after 6 months to 1 year, and how much change that happened in their life. They come with very limited English or zero English, and like 1 to 2 years later, you see them speaks fluent English. And this is just a very good rewarding for us when we see this huge transition and how much these families provide to the communities where they start their new life. Myself and my colleagues here, we will be available also for you guys if you have any question regarding the programs, and I wish I provide a little bit about what we do from day to day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Qahtan. So I work in the employment program, and our team is a team of 6, 7 if including me, and our job is to encourage our clients and then teach them what the employment program is in the U.S. and where they can find jobs, and we provide trainings needed to get there so that they can in a few months start contributing back to the community. So the way we do that is we receive clients from 3 to 4 different categories. We have our clients from the Resettlement program, reception and placement that Qahtan mentioned. So if Resettlement was the backbone of our agency, employment is the arms and legs of our agency. So from Resettlement, many of our clients, we get them from Resettlement, but that's not the only place. We also get many people who are walk-ins, especially from Cuba. They have been paroled according to the Cuban-Haitian policy that we have had. And another category we have are asylee clients. They received asylum and after they have been in the U.S. And we also receive a small number of clients from the STEP program, Survivors of Trafficking Empowerment Program. And once they are in our program, we provide a lot of training so that they can be employed immediately. One program we have is Job Readiness Class. In the class, we talk about the jobs that are available in Austin, what kind of questions they can expect at the job interview, and how they can survive and thrive and become really contributors in the community. That's our biggest focus in our job readiness class. And after that, we help them with applying jobs every week. And then once, after a few 3 to 4 months on average, many of our clients are employed. And then they are always contributing back to the community. And it's always the biggest part about our agency is that they would be self-sufficient, obviously. And then the next part is to become contributors in the community. So that is the employment program. Thank you.
This slide shows a little bit of what Moses was talking about. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you all play into what we do at Refugee Services. So I mostly do, development and community outreach. So while these great folks here are working with the refugees, I'm the one that's working with their wider community, right? About educating everyone about who refugees are, where they are in our community, and how people can actually support them and can participate in helping them integrate into Austin, into Texas, into our country even. So we partner with a lot of other nonprofits here in Austin to cover social services, right? So we are a resettlement agency, but we, even though with 40 staff or so, we can't do everything, right? So we partner with a lot of other nonprofits that provide other services to refugees that are extremely, beneficial and crucial. For example, IACT, Interfaith Action of Central Texas, they provide all of the ESL classes that our refugees go to learn English. There's also Caritas of Austin, which many of you may be familiar with for their work with homeless shelters and different groups like that, but they do actually also have a refugee resettlement program as well. So we work with them very closely on that. We work with the Austin Independent School District with their family support specialists and coordinators in helping those refugee families and especially those kids integrate into the American school system. So there's a lot of different organizations, both, kind of in the city or local government as well as with the nonprofit sector that we partner with to make this all happen. We also work with a lot of churches, and that shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, right? Because, our religious groups here in Austin are a big supporter of, helping those who are in need, helping those who are in a vulnerable place, and making sure that our community is working together to bring all of that, into a better future. And from churches and from other religious groups, we get a lot of volunteers, we get a lot of donations, we get a lot of types of support that really help us do our job, right? So we have tons of people who are donating clothes, who are donating housewares, they're donating bus passes and HEB, grocery gift cards. They're donating maybe other Visa gift cards. They're helping with rent assistance. They're doing all kinds of things, and those things are not things that we usually have enough resources to be able to just provide to every client that we see. So we really do rely on those donations and those volunteers to come forward and help provide, where those gaps exist for the refugees that we serve. One big way that a lot of different groups in Austin, religious and secular community groups, have been helping out is through welcome teams, which are, maybe a 5 to 10 group of people who commit to supporting a single refugee family for that first 3 months of their time here in the United States. That's their initial resettlement period, and they will be there with us to pick them up from the airport. They will be there helping us set up the apartment before the family's arrival. They will be visiting with that family on a weekly basis to make sure that they have everything they need. They'll be helping them learn English. They'll be helping them practice for job interviews. They'll be taking them to their appointments at the screening clinic or with social services, or with, other, medical appointments or different things that they have to go to. And they essentially are the very first friends, that this refugee family is going to have in the United States. And it's really important, too, for them to have American friends, right? Because they have a network of other refugees that they get to know, but it's really important for us to cross that barrier and to actually have them interact with American people, and they can ask questions. They can try to get advice. They can start to understand American culture and community so much better. And those families that have had welcome teams, it's a huge difference when you see them. They come in, they're so much more confident about speaking English. They're so much more confident about interacting with other people in the community. They have a much better sense of Austin and where things are and different things that are available to them. And they really feel a stronger connection to this new community where they are. Unfortunately, as we have seen a huge increase in the number of refugees worldwide, as well as refugees that are coming for resettlement, over the past several months, towards the end of last year, we had a huge increase in the number of volunteers and the number of welcome teams that came forward to work with us. So I want you all to know, despite, negative things that you hear on the media, the community of Austin has had an overwhelmingly positive response to this community and to this need that is here, among this population. So people have been stepping forward out of everywhere to come and help. And we have our Survivors of Trafficking program, has started a new Survivor Mentor program. We've started sewing classes. We had a person who donated 10 sewing machines that we were able to give to refugee women, and now they're taking sewing classes and they're able to start learning how to sew, and that will potentially lead them to job opportunities and being able to sell things that they make and actually earn money for themselves. We've had digital literacy class where we've been helping refugees with learning how to use computers and learning how to use, Google and email and Word and all kinds of different things that will help them with employment. All of those things come out of donors and grants and volunteers and other organizations that have stepped forward to come and help. So I want to put that out there as a way to let you all know that there is definitely something that you can do to support refugees. So if anything that you've heard here has sparked your interest, or if you have more questions about what you can actually do to support our clients and to support this group that is living here among us in Austin as Austinites, there are definitely ways that you can do so and that you can be involved. And of course, by hosting this forum is definitely one big way that you guys have already done that, right? By coming here, by listening, by giving us the opportunity to put the word out there and to do more education to our community about refugees and about these people that are now, living among us as our fellow neighbors. So that's a big way, but there are so many other ways that that you can get involved and that you can help support not only our organization, but also the refugees themselves that are here in our community and who are starting new lives. So we just want to say a big thank you to all of you for being here, for opening your ears and listening, and for hosting this forum as well, so that we have a place where we can come and speak about this to our community at large. And we'll begin the Q&A now, so if you guys have questions, feel free to ask anything. We're here to help you. But I just want to kind of end with a big thank you before we do that, so that you all know how appreciative we are of the opportunity to be here today.
And thank you. And we also want to thank the Social Justice Committee of the First Unitarian Church for doing a major part of arranging for this presentation. So thank you, Peggy, and other Social Justice Committee members. Do we have a question? Peggy Morton.
Thank you. Thank you each for speaking and sharing what you're doing. It's wonderful to hear about the many layers of what you're doing, the solidarity that you're creating between Americans and immigrants. I noted that when you were naming countries where people are coming from, I didn't hear any mention of Mexico, Central America, or South America. And I'm curious to know how people in those countries would be able to access your services.
Great question. Thank you. We obviously have very close borders with several countries that are in need of resettlement for people. The U.S. does not view countries like Mexico as a group of people that would be eligible for resettlement to another country like the U.S. However, a person can live in any country and apply for refugee status. So every once in a while you will hear about a Mexican national who receives refugee status and is resettled due to various reasons of persecution. But several of the countries that were mentioned because the UN views them as being countries where thousands of people, a whole group, a whole religious group or social group is in need of resettlement. Central American countries, there's 3 Central American countries, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, that just last fiscal year, the president added to the list of eligible countries and groups that can apply for resettlement. And what that looks like, though, is not just anyone from one of those countries. They have to be minors who fall under the same definition of being a refugee. And often that means, because of the situations in those countries, drug violence, young girls being raped, and all of these other scenarios that are happening pretty regularly, and that have certainly sparked the reason why so many youth have fled those countries and into the U.S. So those countries, to get back to it, those 3 countries, if there is a youth who has a parent who is here in the U.S. legally, they can apply for their child to be resettled to the U.S. And we have worked with several families through that application process, and are expecting to receive our first refugee from one of those countries in the coming months, which is very exciting. So it was a great move by the U.S. government, and we're happy to be able to participate and offer that service to the community.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. In addition to being a member of this church, I also serve on IAC's board, so many thanks from IAC. My question is about the young people who come as refugees. I've heard some alarming statistics recently about their graduation rates, and I'm not sure if your organization is involved with that population, but if any of you could tell us more about that, I would appreciate hearing more.
almost half of our total clients are actually children, school age or not, but so we work very closely with Austin ISD. They have a position specifically for liaison between the refugee family and the school. It's a single person for the over 80 campuses in AISD that have refugee children enrolled in those schools. So there's no way that this one woman, and she is amazing and a superhero, but there's no way that she can do everything that needs to be done. She has 2 part-time staff that both speak one speaks Arabic, one speaks Burmese, and again, their job is to help ease that process. Austin AISD is in the very preliminary stages of creating a newcomers program or school where all refugee youth will start out in order to hopefully overcome some of that initial school shock and just learn the systems and processes, what you're supposed to do in a school and how you're supposed to get lunch from the cafeteria lady and how you're supposed to ask to go to the bathroom when you don't know the word for bathroom or toilet in English. So all of those things, which will hopefully encourage start to encourage higher graduation rates. It's difficult. Austin ISD is a large district. There's lots of children, but they are increasingly focusing on refugee youth specifically and their graduation rates and their success in school and also outside of school. So we have been really pleased to see that increased focus from them. We don't have funding ourselves for youth programming or in schools, and we're always looking to capture that from community members or foundations. But we do work within the schools and offer support groups for children who are struggling. There's bullying, as there is with all children, and then just the adjustment process of it. So we work really closely with the school system, but we're hopeful as well that there will be some improved graduation rates in the coming years. Yeah, thank you.
It's hard for refugees because there are a lot of refugees that are they come when they're maybe 17 or 18 and they haven't completed high school education because that education was interrupted, right, by their refugee situation. So they may have been living in a refugee camp for any number of years where they, weren't getting any formal education. So when they come to the United States, they're very eager to, go back to high school, get their high school diploma and things like that. But there are, just policies and rules and things like that in place in the school system that prevents them from being able to actually enroll because they're too old, and they will be, they won't be able to graduate within a certain number of years and things like that. So it gets very difficult for them when they're in that certain age. And the liaison with AISD that Erica mentioned, she works really hard to try to find programs like GED programs or other things that they can go into so that they can, at least get that document or that diploma in some way so they can proceed to, finding employment and other things like that. But there don't exist very many options for them, and that I think probably contributes to some of that, what you hear about, refugee graduation rates, as many of them are kind of too old when they get here and their education has been interrupted for too long. And I know in Houston there is actually a school, it's like a kind of like a night school that is specifically for refugees and immigrants who are in that situation where they are too old to actually go back to high school and they're able to get their GED. But unfortunately, we don't have an equivalent of that here in Austin yet. Hopefully, maybe one day in the future there will be. But that's also something to take into consideration when thinking about, refugees and their high school education.
I would like to ask you, maybe you've already explained some of this, but just for me and maybe others. The UN agency that decides who is a refugee, and then the country, what agency in the U.S. decides where they should go? And is Refugee Services of Austin a government agency? I've heard you use the word agency referring to yourself. And is there Refugee Services of Oklahoma and Arizona, et cetera?
Great questions. I hear a few questions within that. So to clarify, we are a nonprofit organization. We sometimes do call ourselves an agency. We use the organization and agency interchangeably. We receive federal, state, and private funding to sustain ourselves. there is not a Refugee Services of Oklahoma, of Arkansas, etc. We would love to see that happen, but right now we are just based here in Texas. There's 5. We're a 5-site operation, though, so we're here in Austin. There's sites in Houston, Fort Worth, and Dallas, and then Amarillo. And our headquarters is in Dallas, and we're always looking to expand. And then what the federal arm is that oversees refugees here in the U.S. is the State Department. And within the State Department, even there's a Bureau for the Population of Refugees and Migration, PRM, that is really the administrators of the resettlement program in the U.S. So they are in communication with the president, with Congress every year on determining the total refugees that are going to be resettled in the U.S. And then there are 9 national organizations. We partner with a few of those, but there's 9 national organizations that are deciding how many they can each take, and then down to the local level when they are going to allocate refugees to us. I don't know if that answered all of your questions, or if there was there more? I know Moses has some insight too into graduation rates and refugee youth being in schools, and I would love to give him a chance to add as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. I just want to add to your question that and also to Mallory's answer, that for many who are not able to go to high school here, they have the option of going to Gary Job Corps. It's in San Marcos, and it has very high graduation rate. I have many personal friends who graduated from there, and they don't only get the high school and GED, they also get trainings in welding, security, any type of profession that they are interested in. So there's one option for our clients and for refugee populations.
Hi, my name is Zulma Franco. My first language is Spanish, so I have my interpreter with here. So, mi pregunta es, ¿cuál es la diferencia entre el tráfico y el human traffic, el tráfico humano? Bueno, yo estoy aquí con un asilo político y he estado en un procedimiento legal. Tengo un abogado que está llevando mi caso y quiero saber un poco más cuál es la diferencia entre el tráfico y el tráfico humano.
So, I have asylum here, and I have a lawyer that is helping me to work with that. But because of my case, I'm very interested in knowing what is the difference between trafficking and human trafficking.
Sure, I'll stand up so you can actually see me behind the podium. So our Survivors of Trafficking program, that is for human trafficking, right? So when we say trafficking, we're talking about human trafficking. And that program serves domestic and foreign survivors of trafficking, so whether or not you were an American citizen who was trafficked here in the United States, or whether or not you were a foreign-born person who was trafficked in the United States, that program can provide services. And the definition of human trafficking is that a person is forced, a person is made to either perform commercial sex acts or to provide labor using force, fraud, or coercion. And there has to be an element of one of those 3 things. So force would be, physically restraining people, beating them using physical violence. Fraud means offering basically false promises, like saying, oh, you're going to work for us and then we'll do this or that. And then in reality, they're just basically enslaving the person, so they're offering like a fraudulent offer. And then coercion would be taking away the person's documents, their birth certificate, their passport, and, threatening maybe their family or threatening their lives. So basically coercing them into providing, free labor or commercial sex acts, in that way. So that program, our Survivors of Trafficking program, can provide services to anyone who has been a victim, but you must be identified as a victim of trafficking, and there has to be that element of force, fraud, or coercion. And we actually have the capability of screening for that. I know the police department also screens as well to identify victims of trafficking. So if you are identified as a victim, then you can come to our office for services. And you can contact our office at any time to ask about the services we provide, what kind of documentation you might need, what kind of status you might need, or anything like that. So feel free to do that. We do have Spanish-speaking caseworkers that work in that program, so people will be able to communicate with you if you have questions about anything. Same thing with anybody else who's interested to learning more about that program specifically. You can always call our office and ask for that program, and we'll speak to someone.
I think we have about 7 or 8 minutes left. We have a question from Douglas.
Thank you. Erica, when you were doing an overview of the refugee problem, I remember the numbers right. I think you said there were 60 million refugees worldwide, and the U.S. only accepts about 85,000, so that's slightly over a tenth of 1%. So I'm going to make the assumption there are a lot more people that would like to come to the U.S. than are allowed to come here. I was wondering if one of you could say what are the key criteria in terms of determining whether or not a person gets accepted as a refugee in the U.S.
Okay. With 4 people, we require good eye communication, good signals. So the criteria for coming to the U.S. versus another country doesn't differ a whole lot. However, there are a few resettlement countries. So the resettlement countries include the U.S., Canada, Australia, several Scandinavian countries, and then there are very small programs that are starting but aren't usually mentioned. For example, Japan has a resettlement program. It's very small, and they're really sort of establishing best practices still there. So there can be some very large differences in who is accepted to which countries, and that a good example of that, or a good comparison, is between the U.S. and Australia. Australia, for the most part anyway, requires that refugees who are going to be resettled to their country speak English, have some sort of notable profession, with the overall assumption that their adjustment process is going to be fairly smooth, that there's going to be little burden on the country to integrate them into society, and that drastically reduces the number of refugees that are in that position and would make good candidates for resettlement in Australia. Compared, here in the U.S., we take in all refugees, and often refugees who have not been offered resettlement in other countries will be offered resettlement here in the U.S. We take in medical cases, and that's a good example where a country like Australia probably wouldn't accept a very high needs medical case, whereas the U.S. will, because we have one, really well-established medical programs and centers across the country, and then 2, because of our strong values in offering a second chance and a fresh start to refugees in need, when it's a question between this refugee will be either resettled in your country or nowhere, the U.S. has very high morals, and it's very unlikely for the country to say no to that case. So in all likelihood, they will be resettled. And so that's a little bit of an overview, and I know we're short on time, so I think we had one more question.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes left.
Okay.
There was a hand here. Fred Higgins.
Yes, with the presidential campaign that's going on, it's hard to sort out facts from rhetoric and misinformation, but there's a lot of headwinds right now being created. And I'm wondering how you're dealing with that, and is it making your job more difficult, or are you learning ways to overcome it?
We can all speak to this very, very well. But to be short, our job is harder these days. It has been disrupted greatly, but we are running business as usual at the same time. So refugees are still being resettled from all over the world to Austin, to Texas, to the U.S. And we still are maintaining, if not dramatically increasing, our relationships within the community. Like Mallory was mentioning earlier, our volunteer support is outrageously positive. It can't be, there's no comparison to where we were at the beginning of the fiscal year in October. We had a little under 100 volunteers. Right now, or in the past 2 weeks, we have gone up to just under 1,000, and that's not an exaggeration. We have that many people who support our work. Yeah. So it's really great. That has been the result of, the positive result of negative, commentary in the news and media, and then from candidates. So we're really pleased that is the reaction. We live in a really welcoming community, and we feel that being here today with you all, and hope to continue that support for refugees coming to Texas. Yeah.
We're down to about 3 minutes. Do we have time maybe for a very quick question?
Okay, I actually have two things. I teach at Austin Community College, and I think you should really seriously consider ACC for the older student. We have developmental programs in reading, writing, and math. I have a member of my family who survived the Rwanda genocide when he was 5 years old. And when he had been approaching having been in this country for 2 years as a refugee, he felt a horrible need to go back to Africa and see if he could find some lost relatives. I ended up financing tens of thousands of dollars. But what I would like to know is, do you continue to serve refugees like later on, especially when they have a terrible need, to see if they can find family members that they could sponsor to come back?
We do offer continued services. So up to 5 years after refugees arrive in this country, not just in Austin. So if they were resettled somewhere else, that does not matter to us. Up to 5 years after they arrive in this country, we can provide employment services, so helping them find another job if they get laid off, finding the job they really want, or what have you, and then case management as well. So if people have been disconnected from family members and they're trying to reconnect or reunify, we can help with that. Our immigration program, especially in terms of that overseas travel, can help work with refugees who are wanting to go back overseas before they have gained citizenship. Obviously, as an American citizen, we have great freedoms with travel. Without that citizenship, or before you get that as a refugee, there are some restrictions. It doesn't mean you can't travel, but it really does mean you should seek out an attorney to help talk through that and make sure you're going through the right steps so that you're not positioning yourself, poorly later on when you are pursuing citizenship. Yeah. So lots of services, up to 5 years. If you all interact with a family at the grocery store and they're telling you about how difficult a time they're having, you can ask them, are you a refugee and are you here for less than 5 years? And if those answers are yes, or several other immigrants, frankly. But if that answer is yes, send them our way. We would love to help them.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. We want to thank you for a very moving presentation and for your important social work. Thank you again. Let's give them a big hand.